Replacing a legend is never easy. The expectations put on a certain individual are more than one person could possibly take. When Lou DiFilippo stepped down as Derby's football coach after the '82 season, Derby decided this time to stay within the system and give the job to a homegrown Derby guy in Charlie Dicenso. Dicenso, right off the bat, proved that he was more than capable of being the head coach for this team. In 10 years, he compiled a record of 78 wins and only 27 defeats. Along the way, he won 3 Housatonic League championships, 2 Class S championships, and of course, the 1990 undefeated season and #1 ranking in the state. But it's not all about the wins that stands out the most about Charlie Dicenso. It's not so much about the coaching. It's Charlie Dicenso the person. Because if you ever had the fortune of meeting him or knowing him, he was a class act all the way. It is an honor tonight to pay tribute to not just a great coach, not just a legend, but an unbelievable human being. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Cannici. Hello everyone, welcome to Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Cannici, and today we are joined by legendary Derby player and coach, Charlie Dicenso. Coach, I want to thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for asking me,
This
Michael.
is a real honor. I was fortunate enough to be on the team your last year as a coach, so, we go way back in that sense. So let's get started right away. I believe your journey to Derby High School began in 1961, am I correct?
Correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, when you came in 1962 to the varsity, that was also Ron Carbone's first year as coach.
Correct. Right.
What was it like during that time?
I'll tell you, we were first of all, we were very fortunate because not only did we have Ron Carbone, we had Bill McAllister and John Scooble, and history tells us those three coaches were phenomenal coaches. Derby was a fledgling program at the time. We had a couple of years where he just couldn't get things going. And Coach Carbone came in. He was young, enthusiastic, and Coach McAllister was very young. It was a very young staff, and they came in with a lot of enthusiasm and started to build a culture in Derby. And our first year, we struggled, especially the first 4 or 5 games. We really got hammered by a few teams. Back in the day, East Haven, North Haven, they were very, very good football teams, and we actually started to turn it around a bit, and then. Ironically, against the Ansonia, who was a very good football team that year, we were able to pull a big upset. And that kind of propelled us. We won our last 4 games. So it wasn't a winning season. We're 4-5, but that winning those last 4 really kind of set a tone, for what was coming after that.
Now, what was it like to play for those coaches? Because I've heard that, they definitely worked you guys. There were stories that Carbone would keep you guys out at night with that one light on the practice field. So, that had to be like a culture shock kind of.
No, it was. It was. They were, like I said, they were very enthusiastic, very young. Certainly still being in the coaching profession, we probably couldn't do some of the things now that they did then. But, they were very committed to us. We worked hard. We did. We worked very, very hard. Ironically, back then, again, things were different. There was a lot of live work that was done, and our sessions were relatively long. But you know what? They taught us the fundamentals of football. They were very, very good coaches. We didn't, like, offensively and defensively, we weren't as flashy as teams are now. We're very fundamentally sound.
Right.
And that was their thing, you know, to teach us to be very fundamentally sound players. And, you know, just the whole idea of developing a winning attitude and determination. And they instilled that in us. They really did.
Now, was there ever a time where you said, God, this is too much for me, you know, I'm killing myself? Was there ever a point where you said, you know, I got to give this up?
In our sophomore year, our first year was a very difficult year. As I was saying, we lost those first 4 or 5 games. And unfortunately, you know, I think it was a bigger culture shock for the older boys, the boys that have been on the team before. So a lot of those kids began to quit, you know, and we lost a good number of our seniors that year. Fortunately for us, you know, a handful stayed, and they really were good people. Jimmy Robinson and Al Mangillo and Bobby Ahern. These are good people who worked hard and accepted the new coaches, accepted the new culture, if you will, and helped us, you know, learn how to play football and to be a team.
Right. And I'm sure it probably helped that he was your first coach when you came. I mean, you didn't have somebody
to
before
compare him
that.
to, right?
Right.
So, you know, we knew he was tough. There's no question he was tough, but you know, this was just, it was like kind of natural. This is the way it was, you know. And yeah, I'll never forget one time he, back then, you know, we used to have triple sessions, you know, which you can't do anymore. And he had gone to Yale and watched them practice a little bit and came back, and between drills we would have to run up and like touch the scoreboard and run back, you know, so he didn't even have that downtime. But, you know, listen, you know, we were a very small in number. We had to be in good shape, and, you know, he did everything he could to bring us to the point where we can win some football games.
Right, and you talk about McAllister, you know, you heard many stories about him, but it had to be kind of strange for you guys seeing that he was an Ansonia guy. He had went to Ansonia High, and I mean, did that factor in at all, or it didn't really make a difference?
No, I'll tell you the truth. We weren't, probably being young kids, we weren't really aware of it. It didn't bother us in the least, you know.
Was the rivalry big back then?
Oh, it was very big.
So it was still big back
the
then.
rivalry was extremely big back then. I mean, literally, Mike, when you played the Ansonia Derby game back then, I mean, Dana Tinty used to do the cartoons and all this stuff, and he always had that favorite one where he'd have depicted the main street of Shelton or Ansonia with no one on it, you know, because they're all at the game, you know, and that's literally the way it was. I mean, like both communities would come to that game. Right. It was very large. Yeah.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, and you were very good friends with these guys, but you played against Bobby Lisi, Jack Hunt, if I'm not mistaken.
I played against against Jack Hunt. Bobby Lisi, actually, I coached against. Bobby's a little younger. But yeah, matter of fact, Jack and I were matched up the whole game. Right. Afterwards, I had to get 4 or 5 stitches over the bridge of my nose.
He's a big guy.
He was extremely and a very good football player and a good friend. You know, Jack, you know, we go way back to playing in high school, and then we played back in the day on Kasdan softball team together and things of that nature. So, you know, the one thing about the Derby and Sonia staffs, we always had a very healthy relationship. You know, given that given day, we were going to go head to head. But other than that, we're very, very friendly with each other. Right.
Now, one thing about Carbone too, I noticed each year the team kept getting better, and I want to say the '66 season they won the Hoosie, or at least had a share of the Hoosie. Yes. So I think it was then where you just knew that Derby football was going to take off.
Every year he improved. We were 4-5, and then we were 5-4, then we were 6-3-1. Right. Then I think they're 8-0. I think, or 7-1-1 or something. Like that. As a matter of fact, they tied Ansonia. That was a tough game in there. There was a tie with Ansonia in there somewhere. Right. But no question. He certainly, you know, put the program on good footing. No question.
Right. Now, he leaves after the '66 season. I mean, you were still in college, but did you feel betrayed a little bit that he went to Ansonia?
I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
I really was.
You know, I think his reasoning was he wanted to play bigger schools because Ansonia at the time was playing bigger schools. Yeah. But, I mean, looking back, if you don't want to speak for him.
Yeah, I was looking at it as a kid. I mean, you know, I know I was, and I'm sure a lot of the other guys were just heartbroken that he went, especially to Ansonia of all places. But, you know, now as an adult and you look back, there are other things that come into play that, you know, we just weren't aware of at the time, you know, and you know, his career and his, what motivated him. And of course, eventually he went down to Southern. So, you know, it was kind of like a step in that direction, you know. So, you know, being a kid, yes, it bothered us, but we got over it. Because I quickly, again, became very friendly with Coach Carbone afterwards, you know, as an adult, you know, and he was always a great guy. I mean, always. I
always heard he was a gentleman.
Oh, listen, yes. and he was always a teacher. He always, you know, the big thing about Coach Carbone, you know, everybody talks about his football skills and all that stuff, but he taught us really to be men. I mean, he really, it was, football was more than just winning games to him. It was, he wanted us to mature as young adults, and he was always looking for us to become better, you know, and going off to college and having careers and things of that nature, you know.
Right.
So,
would you say that some of the things you took as a coach, you took from him, from
what
he taught you?
Absolutely. Listen, I'm very, Mike, honestly, very, very fortunate. As I said, Coach Carbone, Coach McAllister, Coach Scoobel, then Coach DiFilippo, Frankie Allu.
Right.
You know, I mean, I was surrounded with such great people. I mean, and the whole valley was at that time. When you think back, you know, Mr. Heffernan, Ansonia, you know, Jack, no, it wasn't Jack, Bill McAllister eventually in Ansonia.
Right.
Boots Jarvis.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Valley was very, very fortunate to have some great, great men coaching their kids during that period of time.
Right. And, I mean, Carbone, what he taught you as a player, I mean, must have really helped you in, like, being a better player. Would you say you were a good player when you first got there, or would you say you were an okay
No, I was very raw. You know, listen, back then there was no Pop Warner, and I probably would have been too heavy to play Pop Warner anyway.
Right.
But there was no Pop Warner. So the very first time I put on equipment was that first day, freshman year. And we didn't even have a freshman football team.
Right.
You know, so it was actually spring practice my freshman year was the first time I actually got suited up, you know. So you can see how football has changed, you know, since then.
Right.
But so, no, I was very, very raw. You know, I was a good-sized kid and maybe got a little too heavy as I went through, but they trained us well. They really did.
Right. Now your senior year comes to an end. You guys go 6-3, I believe.
Yeah, 6-3-1, I think.
Right.
Something like that. Yeah.
You go on to win the prestigious Derby Albarello Award. Did you appreciate it back then, or did you just take it as?
Oh no. The Albarello Award was always very, very prestigious. You know, and to win that was very heartfelt, you know, and very appreciative.
Did you expect to win, or
you know, I really didn't. You know, again, being a kid, I wasn't too worried about awards and things of that nature. I had some guys on the team that were very, very good players and could have easily have won the award as well. And I was just very fortunate, you know, to get the votes to win that. But no, I mean, when you look at the people that had won it before, and you say, geez, you know, these are pretty good men, you know, and so to be with them was an honor.
Now, did you know right when your final game ended as a player that you wanted to someday get into coaching, or was it when you got involved with Pop Warner that you said, I want to take a bigger role with this?
You know, Mike, I always had an interest, even when I was playing, and I was basically in Coach Carbone's system like a nose guard and stuff, but I always wanted to know a little more about the other positions and stuff. So I kind of had the itch, you know, early, and then, of course, I went off to Fairfield University, and I was not playing football. I had an opportunity to play football, but unfortunately, I had a medical issue at the time, and I couldn't. So at Fairfield U, there was no football at the time. So Fran Cirillo, who I had known for years, one day calls me and asks me if I'd like to get involved with coaching Pop Warner.
Right.
And that's how it started.
Yeah.
I think my wife still looks back at Fran and says, "What did you do?"
Right.
But that's how I got started with in 1967, really coaching Pop Warner.
Now, was your heart set on coaching in Derby at the time, or did you care, or would you?
My heart was set on coaching in Derby. I mean, I actually was offered a teaching job in Seymour before I was offered a teaching job in Derby.
Right.
And I was so, you know, conflicted as to what to do, you know. And I actually left the superintendent's office in Seymour and went to the superintendent's office in Derby, Dr. Dicenso, whom we knew very well. And I said, Doc, what am I going to do here? He said, we'll take care of it. So, and then a couple weeks I was offered a job.
Right. So now let's fast forward a little bit. Carbone leaves after the 66 season. Bill McAllister steps in for 1 year. The team goes 8-0-1.
Right.
He decides to leave, takes a job at Ansonia. You know, it's where he went to high school.
Right.
You couldn't really fault him.
No.
But out of nowhere, and the story I've always heard is when Big Lou came to Derby, he initially applied for the Shelton job and got denied. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, the town of Derby owes Shelton a gratitude and thanks for not giving him the job. But he steps in the 68 season. I believe they go undefeated that year.
Right.
And then you come on in 69. And for as long as I've ever been in Derby, all I've ever heard about is how great that 69 team is. First off, what was it like coaching under Lou? Not to mention Frankie Alou, who's another very underrated coach.
Absolutely.
What was it like for you during that time?
Well, you know, again, it was such a learning experience. I mean, Coach DiFilippo, who was actually, you know, coaching in Long Island, and the whole thing was he wanted to get back. His wife was from Woodbridge and wanted to get back to the family, more or less. So he had applied for Shelton and did not get that job. And then, of course, he did get the job in Derby. But again, Coach was a great teacher too. You know, and he not only did he teach the kids on the team, but he taught the coaches as well. A very patient man.
Right.
He had a very the knowledge of football he had was phenomenal. He did things, you know, again, it was unique because he came from a different environment where they did things a little differently there. The defenses they played were a little different than what we were playing in the Valley at the time, you know. So he brought his own little style with him, and was very, very. It was important to him to be very, again, fundamentally sound. Wasn't flashy, but always had a few tricks in his offensive repertoire. You know, he'd have a reverse pass, or he'd have a scissors, a Statue of Liberty, the old Statue of Liberty play, you know. So it was amazing. It was kind of a blending of the new and the old at the same time. But that staff, you know, with Coach and Frankie and Freddie Salvati, and myself, and then later on Ray Altieri when Freddie left, you know, came in.
And Gene Biondi.
Gene was there, you know. Again, almost like brothers, you know. We were and Coach. We kind of considered Coach like our father at the time. You know, he was kind of at that level, you know. And but he was always very patient with us, and he was demanding, you know, not only of the players but of us too. You know, he had certain things you had to do, and he expected them to be done, and that's how he approached the kids as well. You know, he approached them as young men. You know, he really did. You know, and he talked a lot about their responsibility to the program and things of that nature. But he was very restrained. You know, he cautioned us. Like he never wanted us yelling at a kid on the day of a game.
Right.
You know, he said, you don't do that. You don't embarrass a kid in front of parents and relatives and things like that. You know, you can talk to him, and then you can talk to him on Monday a little differently, but not the day of a game. So, you know, he had his regiments. He used to have little things like the kids had to polish their shoes before the game.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. You know, everything had to be just so. He would not allow, like, tape on your pants.
Oh, really?
Oh, no.
Wow.
None of that stuff was allowed. You know, everybody was dressed the same way. We all wore, you know, Coach had the NFL background, and we all wore the high red socks.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. So everything, the stirrups, you know, the whole thing, everything was the same. You know, everybody was treated the same way. And when the white shoes came along, not a chance. Not a chance.
He wasn't changing.
No. White shoes were not going to.
I don't think he would have fit in today's football because not just Derby, but a lot of teams have changed so many things that he would probably be disgusted.
No. Coach was very traditional, and he had his ways, and this is the way we're going to do it, boys. And you know, it was good though because it was a form of discipline, you know, and I still believe that, you know, kids do want to be disciplined. You know, they do want to be told what to do. And you're right, modern day football, I mean, sometimes you look at what goes on, and I shake my head, and I'm, you know, I'm not Coach DiFilippo, but some of the stuff that goes on, you say, there's no need for this at all.
Right.
Doesn't belong in high school football, college football, or professional football.
No, I agree there. What was that 69 team like? I mean, good as advertised? I mean, you had so many guys that would step up week in and week out.
No, I always talk about that team, and I use the word men when I talk about that team. I mean, there were some physically superior kids, men playing on that team. I mean, the offensive line we had, was comparable to a small college line somewhere. I mean, Vinny Greco, Brett Sanford, Frankie Romano, Gary Pazuzak. I mean, these kids, these were, they were all 240 plus. And back then, that was, that's not what you saw. You saw a high school lineman at 180, 190. These, and that just fit very well into what Coach DiFilippo liked to do. He was a power running team, play action pass. We certainly weren't spread like we see in today's game. But they were very up front. They were very, very strong. We had Glenny Gattano as a fullback who, in his own right, was a big, strong fullback. We don't even see fullbacks anymore in football anymore. But he was a strong kid. Ricky Volo, a little bit of speed. So. Bunny Basic, the quarterback, good throw. It was just a great combination of kids. I mean, and they were solid right down the line. And then defensively, they were very, very good. Very good.
Right. Now, Frank Alu came when Coach Lou came. It's no secret for years you had a strong bond with Alu, a great friendship. But, I mean, to me, he could have been a head coach anywhere. And, I mean, what was it like coaching with him? Well,
Frank was really my personal mentor because back then, we used to go scouting, because we didn't have the film exchange that we have now and all that. So after our game, because we're fortunate, we played at 10:30 in the morning, so we can catch the Ansonia game in the afternoon or the Shelton game or whatever. So we'd go off the rest of the day scouting, and literally sometimes Coach would be calling out things, and I'd look. I wouldn't. I knew like one phase of football. I knew the eye, but. No, that's how scouting helped me learn football. It really did. And Frank was great because I don't understand some of this stuff, and he would sit down with me and work it all out. I mean, Frank was very meticulous. I saw Frank a couple weeks ago, and he said, "Thank God I've retired from coaching because with the offensive formations they have now, I would have a nervous breakdown because Frank used to like to cover everything, and this spread football now is a little different." But
one thing I noticed about Frank too is he would quiz his players a lot during practice to see what they knew. And, I mean, he was a very demanding guy. I mean, he could be tough at times. I always look back, and he was even more intense during Ansonia week. But one thing about Frank is he loved his players, which you could definitely see. At the end of the year, he would congratulate you. And even if you got beat in a game, he would always come up in the locker room and shake your hand. I really felt that as demanding as he was, he had a love for his players too.
Yeah, again, I think that you're 100% right, and I think that came from Lou. I mean, I never saw Lou ever blame the kids for a loss. It was his fault, or we didn't do a good enough job getting the kids ready. All we're looking for was a great effort. And if they gave us that great effort, and they gave us a good work all week, that's all you can expect. I mean, you have to give credit to the other team as well. I mean, they practice too.
Right.
But no, both of those men, they were both gentlemen. They really were, and they treated their boys with respect, and they did everything in their power, as I said, to make them better men as well.
Right. Now, people will argue, but many people feel John Pagliaro is the best player to ever put on a uniform. You were fortunate enough to coach him 72, 73. What was it like? I mean, great running back, very smart kid too. I mean, what was it like during that time coaching him?
John was, a unique blend of power and speed. And he was not a scat back by any means. I mean, he was a good-sized kid, and he had he was a good 100-yard back then. It was 100-yard dash and the 220. I mean, I think the 220 was his best event because his strength would just bring him around that corner. He said, "Holy cow, look at this." And but as a football player, again, ironically, I started with John, or John started with me when Pop Warner, He had never played before. He was very, very intimidated by the whole thing when we started. And for me to watch him grow was astounding, because he came from never having played to becoming the player that he was. But you know, the one thing about John, you know, he really was not egotistical at all. Every day, he never played defense.
Right.
And when we would run our scout offense against our defense, he would run the plays. And he would run full speed, and you know, sometimes the other kids get a little upset with him, you know.
Right.
But you know, he was always going 180 miles an hour, you know, and he was going to use that to become a better back as well, you know. And he was a very hard-working kid and very determined.
Now you think about, you talked about Ray Altieri. If I'm not mistaken, you and Ray coached the track team a little bit in the 70s, and if I'm not mistaken, 2 state titles were won during that time.
Yes, we did.
I mean, did you enjoy doing that? I mean, was that fun?
The nice thing for me, you know, Ray took care of basically the running events and whatever. I took care of the field events, and those were a lot of the football players, so it was a nice carryover. So, you know, we can lift weights, you know, go through the shot put, javelin, discus, and all that stuff. So it worked out very well, you know. And again, it was a nice opportunity to work with the kids in a different venue. And again, I had to learn all of that because I played baseball in high school. I really, my knowledge of track was very, very limited. But, you know, again, back in the day, you know, other coaches were very good to you. You know, John Aceto in North Haven, who was also a football coach for a while in North Haven, helped me immensely learn how to do all of this, you know. And it was enjoyable. It was really cool. One of the fun things I did is I was able to help a little bit with Diane Paque. I used to practice with her a little bit when she was throwing the discus.
That's right. I do remember that.
Yeah, she of course, she was a wonderful student athlete and did very, very well at Yale.
Right, and I'm sure you were able to get a lot of the players from the football team to come out for that. It was kind of to keep them fresh, stuff like that. So I'm sure that helped the track team a lot too.
No, absolutely. We're you know, again, Ray did a nice job of building that program, you know, and you know, at times I think we were carrying 50, 60 kids, which was quite a bit.
Which is unheard of.
I mean, the nice thing for the kids in track, you know, if you want to play, you're going to play, because you know we're not going to cut anybody. We don't have to, you know, because yes, you only have a couple of sprinters, but distance runners, we can have as many as we want, you know. So it worked out very well for those kids, you know.
Right. Now, was there a point when you coached with Lou where he let you take over the defense or offense? Like, were you able to call it, or how did that work?
No, Lou actually, Frank worked very, very closely with Lou defensively, but Lou was kind of the offensive and defensive coordinator. My role then, he gave me the offensive line.
Right.
You know, it says, you know, this is your baby now. You take care of this, you know. So, you know, early in the week we would sit down and I'd make sure I knew what he's going to do, and okay, coach, this is how we're going to block it, and you know, and we go along that way. But it was again a way of learning, you know, all the little different things that you had to do to, you know, manipulate against another team, because you know the defenses were going to change on you and things of that nature. So my role was mostly with the offensive linemen.
Right. And if you think back to his tenure at Derby, I mean, I want to say he won 9 Housatonic League championships. He definitely won 3 state titles. I mean, could you even imagine that you guys would have the success you had? I mean, that's a lot of work that has to be put in to make that happen. I mean, you don't have the luxury that some schools have today, too, with scouting. I mean, nowadays you could videotape. Yeah. You know, you had to be up there with a notepad trying to view the game as best you could to scout. I mean, a lot of things go into making it happen. I mean, do you look back and say, my God, how did we do this?
You know, you look back and you do kind of shake your head a little bit and say it was, you know, miraculous almost. But, you know, but part of it, Mike, though, was you still see it now, I think, with Ansonia. And I give you, you know, people have always said to me, you know, they talk about Ansonia. I give Ansonia all the credit in the world. I mean, you know, people talk about them. Listen, they're a Class S school, and they're outstanding, and they do outstanding work. And those coaches are great coaches. And but once you get your ball rolling a little bit, you know, it's kind of infectious. You know, it keeps growing and growing and growing. You know, and I think that's what happened. You know, started with Carbone a little bit, started to grow. Then Lou came in, of course, and really formed it up, and then it kept going. And kids wanted to play. Younger brothers wanted to play.
Right.
Cousins and nephews, and some of the other coaches used to always tease us that they'd come down to Ryan Field to play, and over on the baseball diamond there was another game going on. All the little kids were playing football, and they said, sure, in 5 years we're playing those kids,
Yeah.
But it really, you build that tradition, and it's almost like it's self-fulfilling. It just keeps working. You keep working it, and I think that's where we were at that time. The kids in the school believed in it. The community believed in it. And I just think it all went to the success of the program,
Right. Let's talk about Derby-Ansonia rivalry. I mean, it was probably as big as it ever was in the 70s during that time. I mean, what was Ansonia week like for you as a coach?
It was intense. There was no question. Everything was a little bit more. Everything was a little exaggerated. Everything you wanted to do, you want to do a little better. You want to make sure everything was perfect. You tried to keep the glamour of the game out of the way, and just focus on the football part of it. But you knew the kids, they sensed it, and they understood. As time went on, you had to be a little more careful because there was a little bit more interaction with the kids, prior to the game outside.
Right.
And that we had to kind of try to, put an end to. But no, the Ansonia week was special, no question. I mean, graduates, alumni would come back on that Thursday and Friday and want to watch practice. And you can tell it was, and the kids would notice that too. Guys from the '69 team might come up for an hour or so and watch practice and stuff. So it was a very unique experience.
I think one of the smartest things that they did was have that game the 6th game of the year, because you had something that you were building to. I mean, you want to win your league, you want to win every game you play, but you knew in the back of your mind that this game was coming soon. And the more it was building up, I think made the kids, appreciate the game so much. And I mean, it really was.
Our schedule, it was always, back then, it was always the 6th game of the year. The schedules didn't change the way they do now, And early on, I think when I was playing, we actually had a bye week before the Ansonia game, which was kind of cool.
Right.
Because you can spend 2 weeks getting ready for them, But then, of course, that went away for a while. And, of course, now we're back to bye weeks. But that's another whole story.
Was there ever a time where you might have played a team before Ansonia who wasn't that good and possibly you overlooked them? Maybe, I don't want to say overlooked them, but probably went a little lighter in practice than you normally do, where it backfired on you a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, under my tenure, it happened to us. I mean, we were lucky enough to win the game, but it was one of those, you would consider it an ugly win, although I've learned over the time.
I would say you're talking about East Haven.
There you go, Michael.
I remember that game.
Michael remembers. I mean, it was just, you're walking off the field, you're thankful you won, but you're very frustrated, and now you're not sure which team is going to show up the following week, although you're pretty sure that the kids were just looking forward or beyond the East Haven game in that particular example. But it was hard sometimes to stay focused, and remember to respect every team, because the margin of error is not that great in high school football. It just takes a little bit and a couple of fumbles or a couple of interceptions, and the whole game changes in a hurry.
Right. Now, 82 season, did you have any idea going into that season that would be Coach Lou's last, or was it a surprise when he stepped down?
No, it was a shock. It was a shock. Yeah. We had no idea. He never mentioned, never talked about. Matter of fact, we went to the playoffs and we played Ansonia.
Right.
And we got beat. Ansonia beat us. We were going into either go ahead or tie the game, I can't remember, and we had to make a decision whether to kick a field goal or run a play, and we chose to run a play. And unfortunately, the pass was tipped, intercepted, and they took it back, and that just kind of sealed the game. And it was hurtful that you lost, and especially in the playoff game to Ansonia. And went to school that Monday, not having a clue. And I often went down to the coach's office. We'd have coffee in the morning and things of that nature. And when I was there, he just kind of dropped this on me.
Oh, so he did it right after that game.
Yeah,
basically.
he said, "I want you to, going to resign." I was shocked,
Right.
And that's how it happened. Yeah.
Now, did you as coaches try to talk him out of it at all?
We did.
Yeah.
We absolutely did, Coach. You don't want to do this, especially now. You're thinking that he's doing this because we lost, as a reaction to losing the game. But I think he afterwards he told us that he had actually planned to retire a couple years earlier, but he had a nephew that played on the team.
Okay.
And almost like he wanted to finish up with him, and see him through the 4 years, and it all coincided. So I think in his mind he may have retired a couple years before that.
Right.
But this was the.
The way he went about it, I think, was great though, because if you start talking about it, it becomes a distraction to the team, and the fact that he gave no indication that he was leaving tells you that he wasn't thinking about himself. No. He was thinking about the team.
It was never about him.
Right.
Honestly, it was never about him. It was about the kids, and he would never put himself, in front of the team like that. He wouldn't. So, like I said, it was that Monday was a shock.
That was a tough day for you teaching that day. Like, was it on your
it was
mind
hard.
the
You're
whole
just so
day?
distracted. You could. It's like, well, this is never going to happen. Coach is always going to be there.
Right.
But no, it was a blow. It really was. I went back to my classroom kind of befuddled, and about 15 minutes later, Frank Allen was knocking on my door because I guess Coach had told him. And I said, "Frank, what are we going to do?" He said, "Well, we'll talk to him at lunch." Coach was having none of that. He had made up his mind.
There was no big reason. It was just he was retiring.
Yes,
pretty much.
Yeah.
So.
And again, we've gone back in our minds. We said, "Well, geez, about how old was Coach then?" And not being able to put all that together at the time, I just think Coach had reached a point in his career where he said, he had.
I believe he was 68.
I think he was
down,
too.
Right?
Yeah.
Which nowadays, people are getting out when they're 50, 55.
Yeah.
So that's a long time for a coach back then.
No, it is. And he, like I said, he had been, Coach had coached in college, he had coached in the pros, and of course in high school. And I think he just reached the point. And Coach had, he had some issues with his knees and things of that nature. And I'll tell you, Mike, when you talk to a lot of your coaches, it usually comes down to some type of physical issue like that. It's hard. People don't realize, but you go to school all day, and then you go out on the practice field. So you start your day, at 7:30 in the morning, and you end your night, at 7 o'clock at night. It's a long day. And I think he had reached the point where he said, he had enough.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time. Right.
Right. So now, when was it approached to you to apply for the job? Did somebody talk you into it? Were you set on applying?
Our system in Derby, we were very fortunate because, again, Lou, as I said, he was very disciplined, and everything he did was disciplined. So when you came onto the staff, he told you, listen, you're coming in as number 6 coach. If someone leaves, you're going to become number 5, number 4, number 3. And I was coach number 3 because it was Lou, Frank, and myself. Right. And here's, what you're talking about before, Frank easily could have been the head football coach at Derby High School. There's no question. But he chose not to. And he said, they both said, we want you to do this, And that's how it came about. And it was really, Coach DiFilippo basically back then saying to whomever he had to say it to, listen, this is what we want. And it worked out pretty easily at the time. Now, not so much, I think, because of me, because of him.
Now, did you have to think about it at all, or were you pretty much set that you were going to, once they asked you?
I was not, I wasn't prepared in my mind. I never assumed that would happen, honestly. Coach was always going to be there, or Frankie was going to be there, So I was a little shocked and intimidated.
Now, what was Frank's reasoning for not wanting it? He just...
Well, again, you know, Frank had coached a long time too, you know,
Right.
and I think, and you know, Frank was more of a private person. You know, I don't think Frank wanted to deal with the press and all that stuff. I think he had gotten beyond that point in his career, you know, where he's just wanted to coach. And, you know, he stayed with me right through, you know, and he was, you know, outstanding. Outstanding on the defensive side of the ball.
And I'm sure that had to help you having him around.
Absolutely.
Now, we'll get into your coaching, but I mean, did you kind of have to take more of a role with the offense once you became head coach, or?
Yeah, when I took over, we kind of modeled it after the way Lou did it, and honestly, I wanted Frank to just take the defense.
Right.
But again, he kind of said no. He said, you know, you do it, and I'll be there. So many times, Mike, and I think you'll remember, I'd look to Frank. Frank, I'm going to blitz. I'm going to blitz. You know, so we would coincide the coverage and everything else. And he might say, no. That's okay. I didn't.
I'll tell you what, he was a brilliant coach.
He really was.
That was without saying. And when we get to part 2, we will talk about the Charlie Dicenso era as head coach, which was an awesome era, next time for Hometown Heroes. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Cannici. Good night, everyone.